Good evening,
Ah,
and welcome to episode 52 of Momentous Live, where we talk about the end of the world, how not to think about the end of the world, how to distract ourselves with gadget news, how not to get infected during a pandemic, all sorts of great stories. So pull up a chair, bring all your personal protective equipment, bring your vapor rub, bring your handkerchief,
yum.
bring your bowl for your sputum.
Oh, yuck.
I won't show you the contents.
Uh,
And here we go. I'm Tristan Jutra, and with me is...
William Silver.
And I'm Gray Williams, and very confused with the Bane thing that you had going on.
Batman.
It will be very painful for you. It has been very painful for me and my wife, a little bit. But we'll get into that later.
Oh no.
Happy pandemic,
no.
y'all. Happy...
Oh no.
Yes.
So if you're interested in Momentous, you can learn more about us, momentous.tv, twitter.com/momentous.tv, facebook.com/momentous.tv, instagram.com/momentous.tv, youtube.com/TJM or go search my name on YouTube and look for the Momentous playlist, etc. But today we're going to only talk about the absolute minimum about the goings on in the world, and there's a couple of cool stories there, and we'll leave some links for you if you really want to go down those doom scrolling rabbit holes. But we've got all sorts of other things. We have so many stories that we've just been pushing off forever, and unfortunately some will just be resigned to the dustbin of history. But let's start with for some reason we cannot get away from this weekly feature. Which is, I guess we'll just call it This Week in Wordle.
Yes.
We discovered
Wordle news.
exactly.
Da-da-da-da-da.
For some reason, I can't help myself if not that I'm even playing it anymore, but you discover another variation, and apparently, we've had the two games at once version of Wordle, the four games at once, the Quadrille or Quordle, Duordle, Quordle, etc. Now we got Octordle. So if you have a personality defect, a massive one, and you need to, tell everyone about how amazing you are at solving not just one Wordle at a time, but maybe 8, check out Octordle. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Thoughts, anyone?
Parents are actually training their kids for this by beating them with a bag of Scrabble tiles, so it's great. Just, this is where we are.
Yeah.
This is
Right.
and it's okay to like things.
Yeah.
It is. This is going beyond like, though.
A little bit of personal world news. My wife was very happy today. She solved it in 2. So
Nice.
that's her.
I hope she
her
shared it on
Place where
all
we
her
have
social
personal
media.
world news.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pardon me. That'll be the first of many.
Yes.
I'm not fast enough on the mute button.
You
All
should
right.
have called it in. Well, what are you doing
That's
here?
exactly what we're doing is calling it, and we've been calling it all year.
No, we're zooming it in.
Yeah, exactly.
Are we safe? I use a Mac. I don't have antivirus.
No.
Oh.
I'm not going to say raw dogging it because I don't know what it means.
Sorry,
A bit
Rob.
more other follow-up news, kind of, I guess, maybe almost a year-old follow-up news, and I'm going to throw to Gray on this, being our official Sonos correspondent, is last year we had the release of the Sonos Roam, which is a Bluetooth speaker, sort of lowish price Bluetooth speaker from Sonos, and now they have the Sonos Roam SL. Gray, can you remind us what the Sonos Roam was, and what's the SL, and who's this for?
So basically, there are 2 Bluetooth portable speakers in the Sonos environment. The first was the Sonos Move, and it's about $500 Canadian. It's a big, chunky, beautiful speaker that uses its built-in mic array to basically figure out where it is in the room, even when it's outside, and to give you good sound based on that. And you could Bluetooth into it, so if you take it away from your Sonos network, it would actually be able to play music, which is something that we haven't had in the past. You always had to have a network set up. And so, in some cases, I used to get around that by taking Sonos speakers with me and actually having a phone hotspot them. It was a very janky solution to get decent sound where you could get just like a UE boom or something like that to do it. And so people were saying, great, awesome, 500 bucks Canadian, bit much. So could we have something maybe a little smaller, a little more portable, and a little bit less expensive? And Sonos is like, I got you. And we'll do something that we've never done before, which is we will give you a Bluetooth gateway into your Sonos network. So this tiny little thing, the Sonos Roam, it's sort of it's shaped like you remember Neil Young, this MP3 player, the Pono player.
Mhm.
This is almost like this is the more successful music device of this triangular Toblerone shape, and so it does all of those things. It has a mic array built into it, which allows you to use, I believe, Alexa and oh god, I've probably triggered something in the house, and I've got a little contained network for these things where it's just I test things out, so it's probably upset with me now. Sorry. And this right here, it works. My problem with it was that not the mic so much, but the interface with connecting your network. So if you had not set this up on a Sonos network when it first came out, it would not work in Bluetooth mode. So you had to connect it to a Sonos network first, and then do a firmware update so that it would actually be able to connect in Bluetooth mode. Now they've since updated the firmware for that, but for the first week that I had one, I actually got one and had taken it on vacation without setting it up first. And oddly enough, I had to do the hotspot thing of setting up a brand new Sonos network, and then, sorry, cat, and then being able to use it. So cool, but the interface with actually like getting it back and forth between the network, pressing and holding the power button, which is confusing as hell. Like it just, how long do you have to do it? You're listening for different tones. Was that 2 tones? Was that 1 tone? I don't really know. Whereas on the Move, on the back of it, there is a Bluetooth button. You click the button, it goes into Bluetooth mode. Congratulations, you can now play on Bluetooth. So the back and forth with this was kind of a pain in the neck. Now we have the Sonos Roam. Is it SL? Yeah.
SL, yeah.
SL, yeah. And so SL is, Sans looking over. I don't know. Basically, it is their line of speakers that does not have a microphone in it. And this is for folks who, like me, have an extreme paranoia of Amazon and Lex Luthor running it. And so basically what they've done is they've rolled this out, and they're a little bit less expensive. And they don't have the microphone built in. So you can't do all of the voice command that you can do with other systems. This is kind of interesting. And I've always found the SL line kind of interesting because Sonos has purportedly, very quietly, been working on their own voice command system to be separate of Amazon, separate of Google, separate of Apple, which quite reasonably I think is probably the best thing for them to do, because right now we know that Google is actually holding some features hostage from Sonos, trying to get them to not use Amazon system, and also to not get them to connect to HomeKit, which Apple, I think, has been reticent to help them out with the HomePod, but the HomePod's kind of almost an also-ran right now. It's more of a home... It's a home speaker system, and they're great, but it doesn't do what Sonos does. So that's what this thing is. It is your portable speaker without a microphone, still has the Bluetooth in, still has a confusing interface, a little bit lower price. Somebody out there, you know where this is going to show up? This is going to show up in Costco, because that's where the SL models tend to show up as well. So that's a really long-winded way of saying this is the one without the mic. Thank you for giving me that time.
And backgammon board not included.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call it right now and say that within 2 years, Samsung's going to go ahead and buy Sonos and integrate Bixby into all future Sonos players.
It's rare that
they're going to make Bixby happen.
Like this, I hate you with the core of my... How dare you? How dare you? Samsung wouldn't know what to do with them. Haven't they taken Bixby out behind the chemical sheds and shot it yet? Like, come on.
Oh, but it's so cute. Another fault. So in short, it's basically a portable Bluetooth speaker, but with really nice sound quality,
which also connects to your Sonos network. It's the Bluetooth pipe in.
This doesn't have the voice angle. Okay. $20 cheaper US. Yeah.
So here in the compound, I've got the Arc with a couple of Play Ones downstairs as surrounds with a Sonos sub. I've got a couple of Play Ones in the kitchen. And I've got the Connect plugged into my DJ speakers over here. In the bathroom up here, which is the nice fancy spa bathroom, we have the Sonos Move because they're both also like water resistant. I think IP67, something like that. And down in the smaller bathroom, we have the one that we've named the bathroom. And so you can have them as part of your system, and then when you want to use them elsewhere, you can take them elsewhere. And so I've actually put upstairs on the patio on the roof in a sealed, insulated container a Wi-Fi repeater as part of my Plume system, so that I can actually have good quality Sonos speaker sound upstairs. I take the Move and move it upstairs, so the Roam can actually be part of your system. The Move can be part of your system, but when you want it to go, you pick it up and roam or move with it.
Would it be fair to say that at least half of your rationale for adding devices to your networks is to give them pithy names?
Yes. Was that unclear?
All right. In other follow-up news, Gray was not with us last week. Neither was Tasia, and you may have noticed Tasia's not with us this week either. Unfortunately,
we heard you had a bug.
Not the bug, but a
bug.
We'll let her explain in vivid detail next week. But last week we had the incomparable Jamie Reynolds join us, and we spent a fair bit of time talking about a little bit about AI, a little bit about human augmentation, brain computer interfaces and whatnot. And there was one story that Will had that offered up that I totally missed. So either forgot to open the link or missed the tab or whatever. And so we're just going to throw to that very quickly. And it's about bionic eyes. And these ones are now obsolete and unsupported. What's the story here, Will?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be negative about the whole human augmentation angle, because I think for the most part it's actually really great stories coming out of some of these investigations into technology and helping people, walk, or in this case, see again. The interesting thing about this story is that it's regarding a company that was doing ocular implants, and basically the company went under. And the company's name was Second Sight. And basically, so now these products are unsupported. One of the women in the article actually, was on the New York subway, and basically something jostled and she heard a beep, and basically she went blind again. So she lost her vision. And one of the quotes is, "It's a fantastic technology and a lousy company." So this shows sort of maybe some of the downside about some of these proprietary technologies and some of the possible pitfalls along the way, especially when no one actually buys out the company or is there to support the technology long term. So it definitely is a concern, and I just thought it was an interesting article because we had quite a few pieces last week about biotech, but I think for the most part there's a lot of positive things in the horizon for some of these technologies, but this is definitely something to keep in mind.
It definitely raises an interesting and problematic issue when you have a lot of startups getting into some really exciting technologies to help people, whether it's ocular implants, cochlear implants, other sorts of neural interfaces and whatnot to help with various conditions. One of the things we talked about last week was to help people actually walk again by bypassing certain parts of the nervous system. And when you have these small biotech startups, if they don't have some sort of pathway to profitability, and if they don't get bought up by someone else, they could end up with products and services that end up with orphaned customers or patients, as the case may be. So unless you have larger multinational organizations, publicly funded companies and whatnot, or even government stepping in to maintain some of this stuff, it's going to be there's going to be a little bit of collateral damage in this. That's why it'll be especially interesting to see what happens when you have Apple, Amazon, Google, and others who have definitely expressed a lot of interest in healthcare, health technology in general, and have been testing the waters with various assistive technologies, even with the consumer grade devices such as AirPods being used to help with low hearing situations, just not as full-on hearing aids, but just for assisting. And there's more to come there. But again, this is just one of those little human stories that's important. Anything to add there, Gray, on this?
Yeah,
Angle?
so a couple of things.
Will right to repair fix this?
Well, and so that actually sort of is one of the points here, and I've said this before. In order for patents to be issued, I think we have to also include a clause that if you are no longer able to support, and that does not include monetizing it. But if you're no longer able to support the product or the technology, and the product has been used in certain categories, I'd like to see it blanket across all categories. But if you can no longer support the thing that you've been given the patent for, it immediately becomes open source, and everything is released. And that's part of the deal. I think the intellectual property has to be essentially unveiled and kept in secret outside of the industry, but to government, in order to receive the right to be able to sell these things to people, we now have to know that this won't happen. Right? You can't get on the subway and your eyes stop working, or God forbid, you are outrunning a marathon and your Jarvik Mark 10 artificial heart stops beating. This is something that is uncompromising. Like we
to be fair, it was out of range at that point. So
right? if they had got their shots, they would have had 5G. So
need the repeaters in the subway stations. That's the
yes.
Yeah. So this is one of the things I think that is extremely challenging. We cannot have systems that rely on network connections in order for them to operate. That is ridiculous in and of itself. Looking at the design of this thing, it reminds me of The Terminal Man. It was a book in 1972 by Michael Crichton, a 1974 film. Didn't do particularly well over here in North America, but it's actually quite good. It's a very bleak film that almost technology stands in for addiction in this film, but it's about a very brilliant man who has seizures. And essentially has electrodes implanted in his brain, and it starts to go wrong. The book is actually a little bit more in line with this, where this technology is essentially it goes awry, and without the control of it, this man kind of goes on a murdering spree. A great movie.
happens to the best of us.
I kind of wanted to relate this back to something that happened on the weekend. I had a family member who I love dearly, who on Friday started to express nausea, dizziness, and a few other things. And this family member is a little bit older, and both Ray and I kind of went, "You should call 911." And there's this. I think there's this reticence in the older population where it's like, no, I'm fine. It's like, no, this is actually what your tax dollars pay for. This is what the system's for. And so eventually convinced them to call 811, which is the nurse line here in BC, where in 811, give them the advice of call 911. And so they did. And, it was quite serious. It was quite dire. And on Sunday morning, surgery was done. There's some stents, angioplasty, great, done, back home and healthy. But as Ray and I were talking about this later in the day, but we took a look, and TELUS has a program where you can get an Apple Watch as part of on subscription, essentially not subscription to own it, but basically as part of your monthly plan until you own it, you can pay for it, and it covers health monitoring as well. And so looking at that, this integration of healthcare systems. Apple sells the Apple Watch. You can get this through TELUS with some healthcare monitoring and some apps through their eHealth as well. We're starting to see more of a focus in this space. And, go fast, break things works in a lot of places. It does not work in human health. So this is a place where I think we need to be absolutely vigilant, and we need to be talking to our politicians and saying, look, you know what, we want the best of care for everyone, but this sort of thing where, a life-changing technology goes away, if you're going bankrupt anyway, then it's not going to cost you anything to put this back out in the market, unless you're thinking, well, I'll sell the technology to somebody, at which point you should be supporting it until it is sold. So incredibly disappointed to read this, incredibly disappointed in, the company and then the co-founders in not finding a way to make that work. And the fact that any of them could sleep at night knowing that at some point this was going to basically, someone's eyes were going to turn off, there's a special place in hell for that.
Yeah, there's 350 people apparently that are just waiting for something to go wrong at this point.
Yeah, and that's unacceptable.
So speaking of, pardon me, things that will be obsolete and unsupported in a few years, Spotify has a new device called the Car Thing, and it's a $89 music player to stick in your car. It'll play Spotify.
Can I confess something?
What's that?
I want this. I know it's so stupid, but I drive a Mini Countryman with their BMW iDrive on it, which is, speaking medical conditions, it is cancer as far as car radios go. And this is actually way better than what I've got. And so it's $300
It
bucks
looks
for me
slick,
to get.
if nothing else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's $300 for me to get an Apple CarPlay thing from China that will work with
Mhm.
my car, and then I've got to go through and plug it. But this just plugs in and works.
Mhm.
I kind of want it. I signed up for it. It's only in the US, but I'm like, add me to the list.
Yeah, it's just you wonder with these things that are sort of single purpose devices, how well that's gonna. It's cheap. I mean, at least it's cheap, $89 US, but it kind of goes against the whole convergence, trend in almost everything else with the head units that do so much. And I get what you're saying. Now, do you, when weighing this against the $300 it would take to have a CarPlay device installed, do you have a built-in like a dash
Yes.
thing, or are you not able to like pull a unit out and replace it kind of thing because you've
I
got
could, but
iDrive? Yeah.
so here's the thing. I mean, I think you were both car radio guys at one point, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a thing. We
little.
used to buy head units for things, and had the
Mhm.
Pioneer and the
Face
Panasonic,
plates.
and I had the OLED Pioneer at one point that had the MOSFET, whatever, and these things were like. I got a friend of mine who used to enter car audio competitions, for like how loud can you make this before it obliterates someone's spleen, and so like looking at that. Last time we were at CES, I remember looking around the car radio space and asking like, "So what do you guys have?" And it was like this defensiveness kind of popped up. I think they knew that the end of the industry was nigh, because it's just like car radios now in your vehicle are mostly good enough. And the real challenge is like the software providers have ceded any sort of leadership in the space to Google and to Apple, because they're like, y'all are way better at software. Because I don't know if you've wandered around in the software in the back end of any of this stuff. BMW iDrive, I've got an app called Beamer Code, and you can plug into it with a Bluetooth dongle in your, what's the plug that's down in the bottom? We plugged the
OBD2 port.
That's right, OBD2. Thank you.
Yeah,
See,
I was on mute. Sorry.
Yep. So the OBD2 port. So it's disgusting and gross. So yeah, I could get it. I could pay $1,000 or $1,500 to get a authorized Pioneer CarPlay unit, or there is this cheap and cheerful from Apple, which is from China, which is $300, which the hoops you need to jump through in order to make it work are ridiculous. And if you ever take it in for a service, like, okay, here's how you hide that you've got it. I'm like, you're making me feel like a criminal in my own car. Like, also, screw you to Mini and to BMW for not having a retro kit for the 2017 to the 2018, right? Same chassis, same everything else, same radios. It's literally like there's just again a plug-in piece that goes in the back. Won't sell it to you. Oh, so yeah, I could, but for what, $120 Canadian? The only thing I don't really get is maps. Okay,
Yeah,
I'll do it.
Do you know what I really miss though? I really miss taking off the faceplate and putting it in the special little case and then trying to shove it in your pocket somewhere. I want that experience again. Could they bring that back?
Hey, everything else in the 90s is coming back. We might as well, right? Like the Cold War's back. I guess the Hot War is back. I don't know. The Iron Curtain's coming up. Let's do it. We're in.
I have to admit, I dig the industrial design of this thing and that big old knob. As long as it's nice and slow turning, it better not be a cheap freewheeling knob. And I wonder if these are going to be hackable. If you're going to get people like, installing Rockbox on it or something.
I want Apple Music. That would be the perfect insult to injury. Like, just send them a picture of this and be like, this is because Joe Rogan. Have a nice day.
Serato. Yeah. Put Serato on it.
There you go. It's got a good knob there.
Get two of them and you could scratch. So
yeah.
So the only catch is that it's, it mounts. You got to mount it separately because it's not inbuilt into the dash kind of thing. So and then it's a wire and it's a little unsightly and all that kind of thing. But it's a thing for Spotify fans. Yeah, we'll see how it does. I mean, we'll just like TBD, right? It's interesting to see these services providers experiment with products. We've seen Snapchat with Snap with spectacles, for example, and so more power to them. Hardware is hard, so let's see how it performs in the real world. All right, moving on to more hardware news. This is a bit of a teaser. Sony finally reveals the PlayStation VR2's design. And very stormtrooper look, very in line with the design language of the PlayStation 5, of course. Not a lot of other details aside from the fact that it will require a wired connection to the PS5. Gray, as our official Momentous virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, extended reality correspondent, is this is that cable the fail? Is this are they missing the boat here? With is this just going to hand the victory to Meta in this space, or is there still time to amend, or does this even matter?
So yes, it does matter. I think a lot of folks out there who are enjoying VR have already said like that any sort of tethered to the processing unit design is not something that is going to be interesting to them. They've done a lot of things right here, right? Incredibly wide field of view. They're doing eye tracking. They're doing inside-out tracking for the paddles, which means you don't have to have a camera looking at you. It's the same sort of tracking that's used in the Meta Quest 2. Pardon me, lost that name there for a second. The interesting thing here, and I'm hearing it from a number of different places that make me think that it might actually be valid, is that this is going to be tethered, but possibly not to the PlayStation 5.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at this, so I've actually used systems like this in the past. I was at a Vancouver VR hackathon where they were using a 60 gigahertz line of sight HDMI transmitter. And so the way that worked is basically you had to be looking straight at the unit, but you could have a belt pack either on, or you could have something that basically sat on top of the headset. Which this is using what's called a halo strap, so it goes around the head, so not across the top, which the strap on the full strap on the Quest 2 is. But they could actually have either through HDMI 60 gigahertz, or now with Wi-Fi 6E, it is fast enough to do 4K, 120 frames a second over short distances, which means that you could have a Wi-Fi point-to-point system built in. That to me actually is probably the better solution, because trying to fit that kind of wireless technology into the headset, it's going to be bulky, it's going to burn battery. So if you were to roll this system out and then perhaps as an accessory for another maybe $150, have a wireless unit that has its own battery and has a Wi-Fi transponder, that would be the way to do this. And so I can tell you right now, like with the freedom that I experienced with the Quest 2, I'm not buying this as is. Right? I shouldn't say that. I'm not buying this as asterisk. There might be a killer app that comes out and I'm like, all right, fine, you can have my money. And it's interesting. Is like, I don't tend to do a whole lot of 360 motion in my headset right now, but the few times that I do, I'm watching videos online of people with their tethered headsets, and they've got the wire coming off, and they've now got like gantry systems that they connect up to the ceiling. They've got this wire hanging on, so they can actually turn around in three. That to me is, VR is looking for a killer app, not looking for a VR killer, and that to me is a VR killer. If they want this to succeed, it's going to have to be freestanding at some point. So, I'm a definite maybe right now, leaning towards no if this actually truly is tethered, because untethered VR is really the only way that I'm going to enjoy it.
I think that is a stumbling block for a lot of people. Just the fear that they're accidentally going to like pull a laptop off of the coffee table or something like that. They just want the idea of having the freedom to roam about in a safe space to do what they need to do. And we've seen other configurations where there are chest packs that hold the processing power. I can't remember that. Was that one of the LG ones?
I want to say it was Asus. No,
Asus.
Yeah, it was Asus. Yeah,
it was just a few weeks ago. We didn't actually end up talking about that one. So now there's still lots to learn about this. Maybe that cable is a head fake and it's just for charging, and there's more wireless capability in this than we know. But Occam's razor is kind of like is kind of scratching at us a little bit here. So what? So you mentioned the 60 hertz and 4K, and that's kind of like minimum to get in without making people feel nauseous, right? 120 is even better, but it's just that amount of bandwidth required to get those sort of signals, or to process that on board is and then you talk about battery and all that kind of stuff to make that work. So what is the Meta Quest doing that that makes it an acceptable experience because it's wireless.
It is wireless, and so it is 90 hertz per
Yeah.
eye. It's a slightly lower resolution. It's not 4K, and it's I can't remember the exact field of view. I think it's like 90 degrees, something like that. You can see the surrounding in it, right? That 60 gigahertz that was the transmission for the HDMI, but the MetaQuest 2 actually has an overdrive mode.
Okay.
Which you can basically, like using experimental features, bump it up. The thing is, it's running on board. Right. It is a cell phone processor that's in that, which is why I'm so excited for Apple's headset, because like the A series and the M series are so far ahead of everybody else. And if Meta is able to actually do what they're doing right now with fairly well coded software, it'll be amazing to see what Apple does. So looking at this, I mean, Sony's got a very well designed architecture in the PlayStation 5. It's doing all of the processing on that unit. Because there is, no power draw coming from the unit. It's basically running off of the breakout box. Currently with the PSVR, you don't need batteries. So all that processing power is in one place. Sony as well. I mean, the way that they've designed this thing, if it's going to work, it's going to have a belt pack that does some of the processing on board. And then basically it's relying on some of the rest from the PlayStation 5. I think that would actually work. Otherwise, I mean, again, you've got this big chunky cable. Meta's doing well. I think they've reached the limit of how well they can do. You can go and do a couple of things, actually, like increase the texture size or texture resolution, pardon me, so things look crisper, because it does look kind of a little muddy as standard, but everything comes with a trade-off. And so the MetaQuest 2 burns through battery when you do that, which you can get around with small battery packs that plug in the side. I've got one here, actually. So that's a USB-C battery pack that just plugs in the side. Very Johnny Mnemonic. But John Carmack, very of id Software, Doom fame, basically said, we could do a hell of a lot more with the Quest 2 if the processor didn't run so hot. And so there are a few people online who've done things like water cool the processor in the Quest 2.
Wow.
And they can drive it harder. But like that really, I think, is sort of, you've got this trade-off of thermals, power consumption, portability that we've basically been through for the last 15 years with cell phones.
And you're basically in a Dune still suit at that point too to get. I'm
going to say a water cooler strapped to your back with tubes going around your eyes.
Just walk without rhythm, you'll be fine. So
yeah. And make your own.
No
water.
problem here.
So, in another type of device that has trade-offs, historically, is a portable, handheld gaming device, and a long-awaited handheld gaming device is finally getting into reviewers' hands, and that is the Valve Steam Deck. So, the reviews are generally positive, a little bit mixed. Reviewers are saying that the screen it benefits from the fact that the screen resolution is low, because that helps with the battery life, but the battery life still isn't super duper great. The performance is aided by the fact that it's not super high resolution screen as well. It's a fair bit bigger than, say, a Nintendo Switch, but it feels good in the hands. The controllers are pretty good. Some people are reporting some issues with the one of the joysticks a little bit here and there, but it's kind of a remarkable feat of engineering that they've basically condensed, almost, not exactly a desktop class PC, but a mini gaming PC into a handheld form factor for the PC gaming fans that want to play stuff that is available on Steam, of course. So, and then of course there are some developers that don't necessarily want their stuff to be able to play on this, and this is where the I think Graham might have some thoughts. But before we switch over to Graham on this, well, I'm going to start with you because you've played some handheld games, had a few different units over the years, and what are you ultimately looking for in a handheld unit? You've been more on the console side. And not as a huge a PC gamer, correct? And does this appeal to you, the idea to be able to play some AA or AAA titles that would normally only be on PCs or like on Steam, in the hand?
I was a PC gamer for a long period of time. I think it was around somewhere in the mid 2000s where it became more about consoles. I have also owned a bunch of portables. I owned the PlayStation Portable. I've owned various iterations of the Game Boy, the DS, the 3DS. We own a Switch currently. And to be honest, I know these are PC games on the go, which I think is cool. But with the Switch, we don't use it as a portable system very much. We mostly plug it into the base and play off the television. I know my nephews never plug it in. They each have one because they can't share. And they basically just play it as a portable. So I think it depends, obviously on your interests and how you play games. I think it's interesting. I don't think I'll buy one of these. I love that people are trying different things like this. I think, Gray might have more to say on this, I'm sure, but this is, I think, another key piece to maybe breaking down some boundaries between systems, like things that Microsoft is doing, Steam is doing, about, trying to give people different options about how to play and have games accessible on multiple platforms.
Gray, would you say that this is, you've had some experience with more independent, consoles before, and we're still looking forward to the Playdate, the handheld indie gaming console.
With the crank.
Yeah, exactly. And do you reckon that this Steam Deck is kind of like the handheld version of, if not the Ouya, then maybe like the NVIDIA Shield? Like, and what's your take on this? Is there a space in the market, and does it appeal to you?
And so we talked about this before. There absolutely is a space in the market for it. I think I said at the time, I'm not a big fan of this particular implementation. Just looking at it, there's something, it almost takes like the worst of all worlds, where we have like this company who has released some hardware, like the Steam controller was okay. The Steam Link, which basically lets you play your PC games on your TV, either through Wi-Fi or hooked up to your home network with wireless keyboard and mouse, and would do that. And it was okay. It's since been discontinued. The HTC Vive, which HTC has their next headset and has been replaced by Valve's Index. It's a VR headset. Apparently, it's like it's the best of the best, but it's also the most expensive of the most expensive, really, out of the sets that people actually buy. And then this thing comes along, and they've got a couple of different versions based on size. And it's like, okay, so you're going to sell me a computer that is completely unupgradable and locked in time to, this set of specifications, when PC gaming is always pushing itself forwards. Running Linux, which, we'll talk about in a second, why that's problematic for some other, problematic asterisk for some other companies. Mm-hmm. I just kind of looked at it and went, I don't know. This honestly, it feels like Sega's Game Gear to me. It looks like Sega's Game Gear to me, which is the battery chugging system that had some very pretty things on it, but not necessarily the best gaming experiences. And I really don't know how many PC games I've looked at and went, man, I really wish I could play that with a controller. And so and here's the thing, I play Destiny 2 on my PlayStation 5, and I play it on my PC. And on a PC, I play with a keyboard and mouse. And the level of control and the level of accuracy that I have with it is miles beyond anything that I can do with a controller. There's some great controller players out there, like the best in the world, but it's also, they're professionals, right? The vast majority of us are not having the same experience. So I just looked at someone, okay, I guess this is for someone, but it's clearly not for me. And maybe I've just reached the point in my life where I don't play portable gaming systems, he said, waiting for his delivery of his Playdate, which incidentally, I put a link in the chat here on Restream. The dev package has just come out for Playdate. So I'm going to chat with you guys about possibly creating a momentous themed game we're going to have to do. So y'all...
Can you turn the crank to make our mouths move?
Yeah, exactly. And so for those of you who are watching out there right now, I can see a couple of you. Just let us know what you like that game to contain. Maybe it's going to be like figuring out, why I wasn't on the show last week. It'll be a mystery.
NFT, and Wordle, and aliens.
So
hey, let's play Audience Quest.
Perfect. So you brought up a story earlier that just flashed there, which is Bungie is not allowing Steam Destiny 2 on the Steam Deck.
Right. And so my understanding that here is that this is contrary to what some people might assume, because these are games that would often, normally run on Windows. This is actually running Linux, and it's running an implementation of Wine, which is so it's kind of like a Windows emulator, but not for the whole system, but just to allow you to run specific apps. And so why does Bungie have a problem with running Destiny 2 through the Wine environment on Linux?
The easiest answer that I can probably give, and this is speculation on my part, is that Bungie is not Bungie anymore. Bungie is owned by Sony. Sony is in the console space, and this is Valve taking one step a little too close to the console space. And this is one of Sony's way of just saying, you don't really get to play on our turf because you didn't ask. And so if I had to speculate, which I don't have to, but I'm going to, that's exactly what I think is happening. Anti-cheat can work on these systems. It can work under Wine. They've got the game running on Linux. This is basically, I think, this is a bit of a territorial match for these folks. So I think that's why it's happening. If I can interject for 1 second, really quickly, Destiny 2: The Witch Queen came out last week. It's freaking amazing. All I need to say about it.
At least Tasia's not here to roll her eyes.
Still watch it later and roll them then. Hi, Tasia.
She doesn't watch the show. So one of the other issues that has cropped up
Shots fired.
is stick drift. Will, do you ever experience this issue? And have you seen your doctor?
Never had stick drift. I did have I got new headset at work, and I did have headset drift, where there's definitely a delay between the wireless headset and the computer.
Gotcha.
We were talking about that on
stick drift is something that actually is affecting a lot of consoles, right? The Nintendo Switch has famously had to deal with stick drift. I saw a post on Twitter today. Paul Tassi, who's a Destiny 2 streamer commentator, was showing that he had stick drift on his PlayStation 5. The Xbox Elite controllers are they're famous for it. They're the most expensive controllers. They don't last more than a year. And so it makes me wonder what's going on in the analog stick industry. The part suppliers, because this is now across everything. I don't know of a system out there that hasn't suffered this. And so these companies are replacing this stuff for free.
And explain what stick drift is for people. It's technically a dead zone calibration issue, but what is that in English?
So basically, when your stick is sitting dead center in positioning, it's got springs that move it back to center. What ends up happening is the calibration of where it's being measured starts to go off, and so it thinks that the stick is tilted, so it starts to drift. So if you're not doing anything, your character or your camera will move in one direction or the other.
I think I've had that actually before. I just got another controller.
Well, with Windows back in the day, with flight sims like Wing Commander, things like that, I've got a CH flight stick sitting right over here, and you would from time to time go in and recalibrate the stick to make sure that it was what it was measuring, because basically stick drift is relative to what the calibration is. And so if you can tell the system frequently, this is kind of where dead center is, even if the stick starts to move from time to time, it still knows where its center should be, right? And so it operates from that point. But all of these systems, very few of them have stick calibration built in. They don't let the user do that because there's a probability, likelihood, someone's going to screw it up. The vast majority of users are going to go in, well, I calibrated my stick and it's not. People are idiots. So you can't trust them with this kind of thing. And so they don't. And so now they're replacing these things en masse, which means that it's not really a calibration issue. There's a hardware problem here. And it's a hardware problem that seems to be plaguing everybody. It's there's a specter hunting Europe, the specter of bad calibration in your joysticks. Apologies to Karl Marx.
I think we caught it from bats. So I have had a similar issue here on one of my PlayStation 3 controllers. It's probably about 12 years old, and it only started exhibiting this symptom in the last few months. And whereby you're actually trying to move, and it kind of moves, but then it moves back, and it's just one of those things. Is it just dirt in there? I've tried blowing it out with compressed air and all that sort of stuff, or is it just the sensor's gone bad, or what is it? Should I just throw it in the ocean, add it to the artificial reefs?
So if it's kind of back and forth, that actually most likely is dirt, and we can fix that. We should do some surgery on your controller. We can get that back to working. I also have 8 of them here, 7 of which I'm not using.
Yeah, I have, I think, 5 others as well, and I think it's one of the old it's one of the
Yes.
pre-Rumble Pack ones as well. So,
Mm.
Oh, the 6-axis.
mm-hmm.
All caps, 6-axis.
6-axis,
Not the
yes,
DualShock.
before DualShock.
Yes.
I was like,
They-
oh, that was the most annoying thing ever too. Is like, oh yeah, they launched the PS3 with like DualShock
Yeah.
existed in for PS2, but oh, we're gonna launch a PS3 without DualShock and just go 6-axis. Okay,
that
I
was
get it.
Nintendo's fault.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
was
because
a
of
patent
there's a
battle.
patent thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So
And
they
it
ended up
started.
actually finding a different methodology for creating the Rumble,
Mhm.
which has gone through, and basically they've been evolving their iteration until the PlayStation 5, which that haptic is just, it's way beyond anything anybody else has. So
Off the chain.
Yeah.
In other gaming news, wow, we're catching up on our gaming news now that we don't have Tasia
Yeah.
around. Amazon's Luna Cloud gaming service officially launches in the US. Prime members can play a rotating mix of bonus games. Now, Netflix just got into the gaming, subscription business a few months ago as well. Google has Stadia, the game streaming service, which it seems like they're kind of
Still?
giving up on. Yeah, like, so what is going on here? Like, well, do you subscribe to any gaming subscription services, whether it's Apple Arcade or Xbox Game Pass or PlayStation Plus or any of those kinds of things? And do you have
No,
room for something else in your life?
not currently. I mean, we tend to just buy one-off games. We tend to just purchase them. We don't subscribe. I've thought about it from time to time, particularly with Xbox. But no, we haven't yet as such. We have so much entertainment. It's hard to turn on another fire hose. We already have like 3 streaming services. It just seems like a little bit much. Apple Arcade has almost got me a couple times just because of the various packages and incentives, and already have a couple services, so it's been very tempting. I know, Graham, you do the whole enchilada. I've been tempted to do the whole enchilada a few times, but no.
And which is Apple One,
Yeah, Apple One.
the Apple One enchilada.
The Apple One enchilada.
It's just a random assortment of beans, cheese, and sour cream. It's a bit of a scam. No, it's Apple One's great, especially when you accidentally have multiple subscriptions to other services that are included, but have multiple Apple IDs, and it's not entirely straightforward to merge things together without losing your stuff. Don't even get me started. That's private pain. So Gray, this looks like this is something that you can play through an Amazon Fire Stick.
Mhm.
And they've got controllers and whatnot, and there's 100 games for $10 a month, but you can go down to $6 and all the way up to $18 a month. What do you see as being the market for this? There's some interesting games on here. And you can also play with Mac or Windows PCs on Twitch because Amazon owns Twitch. It's easy to forget that. So does Amazon, are they serious about gaming? Is this like the slow and steady, kind of like what they've been doing with the grocery business?
To be honest, like, I'm surprised that a company that owns Twitch is this tone deaf. This is horrible. Like the channels for games, free with Prime, Luna at $5.99 a month. Lock in your founder pricing: $2.99 for family, $4.99 for retro, $17.99 for Ubisoft per month, $4.99 for Jackbox games, and then you
Do
got
they
to buy a
have-
$50 controller and that
There's too
Fire
many
Stick.
options.
This is terrible. Like this is the least focused. Like I haven't seen something make this bad. I'm without words.
Yeah, make it $10 a month and call it a day. Like
Yeah, like since Ouya, like this is just honestly, like they've missed the mark so badly here. And so here's the thing: they're going to shovel money at streamers to try to push the Luna service. The problem is that gamers are a fickle, bitter, divisive, cranky audience.
Don't
And,
get yourself canceled now. That's a lot of generalizations.
No, it's not. It's accurate. And if anyone out there is complaining about it, give me 5 minutes. So, like, looking at this, it's just they're like gamers will look at this, and as much as they fall in love with the companies that they are in love with, nobody's in love with Amazon. They might run Twitch, but nobody loves Bezos. And so this is just like it is. I can't tell you how badly this actually looks. Um, it's funny because Epic actually did something very similar, and I think this is probably the best example. Epic has been giving away games for free for the last year, and like AAA titles. And the vast majority of people that I know won't even log into the Epic Games launcher to get them because of the way that Tim Sweeney has acted. And so when they're throwing games at you and you can't get people to take them, I'm one of these people. I'm just like, no, I'm not. And that's not out of allegiance to Steam. It's just because bad corporate behavior. Could be bothered, right? So, yeah, I don't see this doing well. It's kind of like, well, here's the thing. It won't do badly, but it won't do well. It'll be just a Fire Stick, and it'll be just like the Fire tablets and the Fire phone and the Fire everything else. It's kind of there, And like even with the Echo things, like, yeah, they're there, but nobody loves them. So this is going to be just another one of Amazon's unloved products.
Add it to the pile.
I'm emoting today. I'm sorry.
Well, speaking of fire, while the world burns in more ways than one, especially in Eastern Europe at the moment, there's so many stories coming at us, and a lot of which can make us feel just terrible. It's easy to doom scroll, and we all know about the effects of media, traditional and social, on our respective mental health. But we did manage to find a couple of interesting, potentially uplifting stories. One is that I love this example because this is kind of like that whole, was that a World Bank guy or some charity in the fall who threw down the gauntlet to Elon Musk about donating a whole ton of money, and then he's like, yeah, show me how you're going to spend it, and here we go. And next thing, like a month ago, it was shown he had a $5 billion donation. It was undisclosed, but people are basically figuring it was to that charity because they did the work, the due diligence behind the scenes. Here's another kind of, so if you want money out of a billionaire, apparently just tweet them. Elon Musk, while you try to colonize Mars, Russia tried to occupy Ukraine. While your rockets successfully land from space, Russian rockets attack Ukrainian civil people. We ask you to provide Ukraine with Starlink stations and to address sane Russians to stand. I guess I mean stand down. So that's from Mikhailo Fedorov. That's on February 26. Elon Musk replies, Starlink service is now active in Ukraine. More terminals en route. And so a lot of people are like, okay, yeah, sure. Let's, we'll believe it when we see it. And then...
we believed it.
A couple days later, Starlink here. Thanks, Elon Musk. And there's a truck full of Starlink terminals. And just apparently this is just the first shipment. It looks like maybe they fit a couple hundred in there. Because, as you may have heard in the news reports, certain key pieces of communication infrastructure have been targeted in Ukraine, which can impact the ability of both the officials and citizens trying to access the internet, which is a huge challenge in trying to get information about what is actually going on. So Starlink, the way that their service works with all their low Earth orbit satellites, which can prove problematic for astronomers, aspiring and professional.
I'll take it.
That you've got enough of these things around the world to in low Earth orbit that these terminals, they call them, but it's actually it's the dish as well. I was a little confused at first, but it's the whole interface with the dish, and you need a clear line of sight, and you can get up to 200 megabits down, I believe. And I believe 20 to 60 megabits up, which is like so much faster than traditional satellite service from the past. So this Starlink has been rolling this out over the last year or two. I have an old friend in Kelowna who got one of the early units and loved it. It was a total game changer for people in rural areas where they could get basically dial-up speeds or slightly better from some of their existing satellite services. And the killer was the latency. And the thing with the way Starlink works is that because they have so many of these low Earth orbit satellites, you can be a lot closer to you, and then you communicate. Your terminal communicates directly to it, and the nearest satellite will directly communicate with the nearest ground station. So there are no ground stations in Ukraine, I believe, at the moment, but there are some in nearby Poland, which is helping to make all of this work. Gray, you jumped in there and you said you'll take it. What is your take on this story? Is this, as problematic as Elon can be sometimes, as bit of an odd guy as he can be, a little too fast to tweet out there? Is this him making good for some of his past
Yeah, it is.
stumbles?
It is. Yeah. I mean, I crack wise a lot on here. This is a somber topic. I was pretty pissed off with Elon when he was, yammering on about the Canadian government being, was it not legitimate because none of us had basically stood up to the truckers who were driving. We didn't have time for those jackasses, And sure enough, next week, fine, we'll tell these idiots to go home, and they have. And that's great. But Elon, don't tell somebody that their country's government is illegitimate because we don't have the time of day for some idiots. But this forgives that. It's I've got a lot of friends of Ukrainian descent, some who are recent immigrants, and we've never seen anything quite like this in our lifetime. What's happening right now, and the Canadian forces have been training the Ukrainian armed forces for the last 8 years. They're putting up a hell of a fight, and in a lot of cases, they're winning. Infrastructure being destroyed, it's a war crime. Like what's happening right now is a war crime, and anything that we can do to push back against that, I think, is absolutely necessary. And so, Elon gets a bit of a reprieve from me for quite some time. This makes good on a lot of jackass behavior. He's done right by people that needed it, and so good on you.
So there have been some questions raised by people online that using the Starlink terminals could possibly put one at risk because of the transmissions coming. Do you think the Russian army is really going to get to the point of targeting individuals running Starlink terminals, or is this just an overblown concern?
No, and to be quite honest, like if I was the Ukrainian armed forces,
Speaking of war crimes,
Ukrainian militia, and quite frankly Starlink, I'd be using this to my advantage. There are ways of running these systems where they run hot, and you can basically have more signal going. I'd be in full guerrilla warfare mode at this point, and I'd also have some of these terminals that were backdoored, and leave them in spots that that the Russians are going to run over them. I don't think anything would be off the table if I had to defend my home. I don't think this is really an issue. I think the Russians have a whole lot of other problems right now. They had a guy with a tractor steal a tank, so yeah. I don't see that as an issue. I don't see the Russians as particularly competent in this case, and so I'd say, use what you got. I don't think you're going to be calling down a missile strike on your head.
One of the other issues that we've been trying to contend with in the modern era of, the 24-hour news cycle, which is always striving to try to fact check in real time, and then of course social media, which a lot of users tend not to fact check at all, is how do you sort through misinformation and disinformation? And of course, there's all sorts of stories, fake and otherwise, floating around. Will, as however much you expose yourself to news like this as it's developing, such as this current crisis, how do you sort through the news to try to determine what's real and not so much in the era of misinformation and disinformation?
I think you need to have a discerning eye. I think you need to look at things and not criticize, not automatically think the worst, but just keep an open mind, and as well, do try to follow trusted news sources, but also try to listen to multiple news sources, maybe even news sources from different countries or with various points of view. I think it's good just to have a wide gamut of things. Because there can be stories, especially one of the things that's happening, I think, a little bit during this whole thing is, it's a war. It's not live streamed. Some of it is being live streamed, but some of it isn't. We don't always know all of the events that are happening. Even some of those stories about the soldiers on Snake Island. Some of that is misreported or various reports,
Or a
because
developing story too, right?
or a
We thought
developing
they were all
story.
dead, and they're actually taken as POWs. We
Yeah,
think.
but I'm saying they're not all
Yeah,
carrying cameras on their head. They're not all
yeah,
they're
exactly.
not all GoPro'd up. So
Where's
some of
Jake?
it
Where's Jake
can,
Tapper when we need him?
yeah, some of it can take time to develop, and I think, like Gray, I mean, and I'm sure you as well, Tristan. This whole thing has been horrifying, to watch this unfold. I think in some ways, we all had parents or grandparents who lived through the Second World War or were born early in the World War. And also, with my family, one side of my family, the Jewish side of my family, actually came from the Belarus, Kiev area, and that the lore in my family is that my great grandfather Benjamin pulled a Russian soldier off a horse, who was harassing, and mistreating Jewish residents of his village, and killed him accidentally by pulling him off a horse, and then had to flee, because that's not going to be taken well when that's found out. And bing bang boom, that's how a certain side of my family is in Canada. So obviously, that was 100 years ago, but it's funny how things don't change all that much. So this is not a new problem. It's just there's worse things than horses and people pulling people off horses. So yeah, I kind of went on a rant there, but not that I have as much connection as some people, and I have a coworker who's basically in tears all day today. Um, it's just horrible to see. It's horrible, I think, for the world. And I grew up with stories of World War II, and this certainly is ringing true on some things, and it's something I thought and hoped maybe I wouldn't see in my lifetime.
It's definitely such a different sort of media environment too, and the flow of information is a lot quicker. And
Mm-hmm.
there's propaganda in different ways. We don't have to wait a week for the reels to play before the movies at the cinema. Uh, so we've included, for those who are trying to figure out how to discern fact from fiction online, there'll be an article in the show notes with a number of tips, including things like examining the metadata of any media that's shared, such as photos and videos. There are a number of fact check sites which one could consult as well. Searching various sources. One thing that I would do when people were sharing things a while back, of certain rallies and whatnot, maybe a year or two ago, and just doing simple reverse image searches of certain images and seeing if they are actually the type of rally that one would claim they were, or were they actually a couple of years before that, nothing to do with the thing. Again, people are constructing narratives. And some of those, sometimes they're just individuals, sometimes they're people with Facebook pages looking to gain subscribers or monetize in other ways by selling newsletter subscriptions or books or powders and potions. And then sometimes there are other malevolent actors, state and state contracted actors that are looking to sow discord or proffer a certain narrative. Other things look for inconsistencies between details of the narratives and the provided imagery or videos. And then just doing some basic gut checks, asking yourself the simple questions: does this thing seem too good to be true? And which is very, very important. Like when we're looking at anything on social media, sometimes certain stories are just a little too buttoned up and a little too perfect, and that should always raise a red flag. So get your spidey senses tingling. But one thing that's kind of brilliant, and I think Gray, you'll appreciate this as someone who is very well versed in online media, and talking about doing what you can to protect your homeland. Well, some folks in Ukraine are combating Russian misinformation by using Google restaurant reviews to report what's happening on the ground, sort of as a decentralized, highly distributed way to get news. Hopefully, they're still giving 5-star reviews to these restaurants so as to not tank them on Google or maybe even Yelp as well. But they were sharing things about what they're actually seeing on the ground in these Google reviews. And I think, you know what? Tell me what you think of this tactic. Speaking of guerrilla warfare.
This is genius. And honestly, this actually scans with a lot of the Ukrainian people that I know. They're just resourceful as hell, and it's absolutely genius. And here's the thing, and this is actually something that I think a lot of the Russian people know. And looking at the people that showed up for this protest, where all protests were banned because of COVID, way to go on that one, Putin. But people have there's been a groundswell of support from the Russian people saying this is not what we want. We're learning about it through things like this because state media wants nothing to do with it. This isn't like the CBC. This is locked down and controlled over there. And so this is one of the things. There was allegedly a cell phone found of a Russian tank operator who had been killed. That basically was a text back home to his mom who said, "We were told that we would be welcomed, and people are throwing themselves in front of our tanks, not letting us move." If that is the case, if there has been this level of misinformation, right down to the armed forces themselves, Putin has definitely overplayed his hand, and this is one hell of a great way to get the word out inside Russia. It's just like brilliant. So well done to them.
Some of the reviews that I saw there. Food is great, but your leader is killing innocent people in Ukraine. Stop this war.
Yeah. This is one thing I did want to say. So Twitter has done a really, really good job of cleaning out a lot of the Internet Research Agency or the GRU sock puppets that were on Twitter. And so if you take a look at a lot of the conversation that's happening on major political channels, different political commentators, there tends to be somebody that pops up and they're like blatantly pro-Russian and completely devoid of any connection to the facts. Take a look at the account. In a lot of cases, made in February 2022, less than 10 followers. If you're seeing folks out there that don't have a great deal of traction in their own personal networks, they're commenting, and all they're commenting on are high traffic posts. They're basically looking to game the algorithm, and they're looking for you to respond to them. They're looking for you to retweet them, looking for you to basically try to castigate them so that they can get more people looking at their message. The best thing that you can do with these accounts, block them. The more people block those accounts, the less traction they're going to get, and especially if they're underneath a certain amount of followers, they're not even going to make it into the algorithm anymore. So the best thing that you can do here in North America, if you're watching from here, is if you see things like this, report them, block them, don't respond to them.
Good advice. In some other brighter news, Futurama's coming back. And although it was touch and go for a few days, it sounds like John DiMaggio, voice of Bender, will be back as well.
I've never seen a picture of him.
Me neither.
Doesn't match the voice.
I was going to say, for good reason, apparently. Good voice for animation.
Does it look like Fry?
He looks like Fry, but sounds like Bender. Yeah. Oh, conspiracy theory. Maybe Bender has actually got Fry's brain in his tank and he's from a parallel dimension.
That's been my theory for years.
There we go. Will, you were a Futurama guy. I think all three of us were probably Futurama people from back in the day, and I hope so. It had a second kick in the can at Netflix a number of years ago that was a little underwhelming. What are your thoughts and hopes for this round 3?
I mean, I have a definite soft spot in my heart for Futurama. I quote Futurama all the time. Second place, that's a fancy name for loser, referencing owls as pigeons. Santa Claus, of course. But I'm psyched for this. I'm glad that the original voices are mostly coming back, and more the merrier. I mean, I think this is also a heartwarming story about the little engine that could. I mean, basically, Fox wanted to cancel it after the first season, and Matt Groening said, okay, then we can say goodbye to the Simpsons as well then. I think, yeah. So that was like 20 years ago now. But and I think it's maybe time to try to give it another kick at the can. It's been a couple of years. I'm looking forward to it. How about you guys?
How about you, Gray?
any more Futurama I will take. The thing that I found kind of interesting, what was sort of filling the void for me, was Disenchanted.
Yes.
Have you guys seen that on Netflix?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that was kind of doing the job. It's just going in the opposite direction time wise and reality wise, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I will absolutely tune in. I'm stoked for it. But there's actually the fourth part of Disenchanted that I just realized I haven't watched yet. So after we're done here, I'm gonna go. I'm lying. I'm gonna play Destiny 2 for the rest of the night. But after that's done,
But not on your Steam Deck. they
no,
won't let you.
am I wonderfully finally working perfectly? I'm gonna knock on wood on that one. PC.
There we go.
Don't jinx yourself.
Yeah, lots of knocking on wood.
Oops. Pardon me. Hope you guys don't catch that. There was something else about the Futurama, and I can't remember what it was. So let's move on to some other good news. Well, is it good? I mean, maybe it's news. Daredevil and other Marvel shows to stream on Disney Plus in March after Netflix exit. So maybe it's a wash kind of news. But maybe for those, I honestly, I'm finding less and less reason to hang on to Netflix as time goes
me too.
on.
Me too.
But it's always a little concerning when you have so much consolidation with fewer amounts of companies, as Disney acquired all the IP from Lucasfilm and Marvel and Fox, and now all the Netflix Marvel stuff from that whole enterprise. Will, what's your take on this? Does this excite you that you can watch all the Marvel stuff in the warm embrace of Disney Plus now? And I have yet to watch any of the Netflix Marvel series, quite honestly, because I know that they were very uneven. So I just
Not even Daredevil.
I did not. I kind of would like to now, given what we
I'm
saw.
so excited for you.
Hawkeye. Yes.
Yeah. I have to
might-
say I am excited, partly because I think you guys can all agree that this is maybe a convergence of things. We're starting to see, through the Hawkeye show and through the most recent Spider-Man movie, that some characters from those Netflix series are starting to appear, and we're maybe seeing what I think is really exciting, not just for Marvel fans, but in the history of sort of media and the history of kind of movies and television, is these things being in one universe and being one ecosystem. I think is really exciting, and I think that there's a lot of creative opportunities and a lot of tying together of pathways and stories, and just having them available on Disney Plus gives more access to have all one stop shop for all the Marvel universe. So you can go straight from watching Infinity War or the new Spider-Man whenever it comes out on Disney Plus to watch the Daredevil series to see what maybe some things might appear in the new Spider-Man movie. No spoilers. Yeah. What do you guys think about that?
Great.
Tristan, you absolutely need to just sit down and watch it.
I've heard that's the one. Oh, you mean not Iron Fist?
I feel bad for everyone involved in that. I don't want to criticize someone that I don't know their process or whatnot, but the lead actor didn't seem to really fit. And from what I can understand, you got to train hard for these roles. And if you're going to be the legendary Iron Fist, you gotta know the kung fu. And it didn't really feel like they did.
It's sad because he's such a good character. Iron Fist is actually, some people call him a poor man's Batman, but I actually like Iron Fist.
Well, and this is the thing. With all of the other characters, they found a way to ground them and make them feel like, the small, scrappy, not quite superheroes. Luke Cage, I thought, was fantastic. Jessica Jones, David Tennant in the first season, phenomenal. And I can't remember the name of the woman who plays Jessica Jones. She was in Breaking Bad as well, but just sublime. And then you get to Daredevil, which was the first one to roll out. But the third season I felt was a little shaky. But the first two, and honestly, within the first, I think it's 2 or 3 episodes, there is a fight scene that happens that feels like Old Boy, the Korean film. And it was just like, I can't believe you've done this on a television budget. It was so good. And so, yeah, I'm great to have it all under one roof. Here's the interesting thing. I've not gone back to watch any of these a second time. This might prompt me to do that, but looking at this from Netflix's perspective, it bought my subscription for that month. I'm actually finding lots of things that I would not have watched before because Netflix is making a lot of new content, and they're finding like some smaller esoteric things that just pop up into my feed and I know where I'm like, huh, I guess you do know me, because that's great. And they're not the mainstream stuff. So, it's interesting right now. Like Ray was talking yesterday, like Crave has got so many great movies because they've managed to snag stars and a few other things. And Disney's got like so much great stuff. And Netflix to me still continues to have great content. And between the four of them, I'm busy. Like I don't have enough time to watch the things that I want to watch. Like I'm watching Discovery now. I'm an episode behind a Discovery, and Star Trek Picard comes out 2 days from now. I saw it on Twitter today. Like, what happened? Like, where did the time go? So yeah, I'm, like great for Disney having it all. I wonder if they had to. There's no way that Netflix could have held on to this. So, and here's the thing: like knowing now that we're bringing these characters, whether it's multiversally or whether this is just absorbing the stories into this universe, hopefully we'll be able to see them do right by some of these characters. I would love, either recast Iron Fist or take that actor and put him through the grinder, and let's see Iron Fist actually be what the character was supposed to be.
I gotta admit, one of the reasons why we didn't get into all the Marvel and shows on Netflix from years ago, not to mention a lot of the DC shows that were on the CW and elsewhere. It's just like I remember thinking at the time, it's not enough time. There's lots of superhero movies. Sure, we'll watch these, but watch all these superhero TV series as well. Who has the time? Little did we know now there's even less time because there's so much great content. So I got to admit that the little bit of tie-in that we saw in Hawkeye got me curious, and I might be able to convince Stephanie to watch Daredevil if we can find any room in our schedule there. It's tough trying to like wrap up certain series and seasons so we can like fold something new in. We're almost on Station 11 now, and there's a series that you're going to be talking about in just a sec, Gray. But Will, let's get to our picks and then we'll wrap it up here because it's amazing how we always go along. There's so much great stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, you've got a YouTube video that you recommend for us. What's that about?
I'm gonna blow it out to not just this one video, but I'll sort of talk about the video a little bit, or their series of videos. But it's a channel called Ordinary Adventures that my wife and I actually subscribe to, and our Patreons of theirs. We enjoy it very much. It's pretty much the highlight of our week. Every time there's a new Ordinary Adventures video, we got to watch it. They're Disney bloggers. They're Star Wars bloggers. They're cruise bloggers. They're pretty awesome. They're just a fun group of people that are very real and authentic and have experiences. They have day jobs, or she used to have a day job. Now she's just editing videos. He is the founder of Slash Film. His name is Peter. And he sold Slash Film recently, but he still does their blogs. He does weekly breakdowns of things like The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. But this is his side thing where he and his partner go and have ordinary adventures. And the big thing recently was that they went to the Star Cruiser, the Star Wars Star Cruiser, what's sometimes called the Star Wars Hotel. And he, in this video specifically, it's not really giving away this much. He basically said, it's not a hotel. Stop calling it a hotel. It's an interactive art experience. So
do you like it?
They loved it, and I have to admit, it's amazing. They have four videos an hour each. If you want to invest, basically they break everything down that's going down. But the summary is you can't break everything down. There are so many storylines going on. There's so many things. If you miss something by a minute, you get one story or another story. It is really fascinating. Now, having said that, if you do have $6,000 and want to go to this, maybe not watch the 4 hours of them revealing all the
spoilers.
story, but there's hardcore spoilers. But it is amazing to watch, and if I had the money, I would be interested. But it is definitely we haven't seen anything like this. I mean, I've never heard of anyone attempting or doing anything like this, having, you know, 10 actors doing interactive play over multiple days. They had to develop terminals with like 3D displays and interactive video games on huge monitors. In the room, they basically have this monitor that's supposed to be a computer interface with almost like a Siri with a 3D robot that you can ask it questions and it responds to you and asks you questions. So it looks super impressive to me. I know there are a ton of people giving this a ton of negative press online, partly because of the price or partly because of whatever.
No windows in the hotel rooms.
No windows. It's a bunker.
It's in space.
It's in space.
It's in space.
I have to say it looked pretty cool to me, but I'm a fanboy and I wanted to love this. This is the other thing, and what I saw was impressive. And the two people in this video were drawn to tears multiple times.
Wow.
So
good. That's really nice to hear, because after hearing so much negativity and seeing how much money's been sunk into it and all the people that were trying to make this work, like, to hear something that's not cynical, or, I mean, if it's bad for sure, but it just it felt like there was nerd rage going on. So this is great. I'm gonna check this out. Thank you.
Well, like Will always says, you can please none of the people none of the time.
Yes. That's my wife's quote, but I love to use it.
Pardon me. We're almost there. We're bringing it home, guys. Speaking of pleasing no one ever, Gray, you've got a story about a superhero who just can't seem to catch a break. And I'll have you know that a certain guest of ours wanted to talk about this last week, but I said, back off, get your own sandwich.
Yes.
Because I knew that you were hoping to talk about it previously, and because of scheduling issues, it didn't happen. So Jamie had to talk about something else. I can't remember what it was at this point because of the things going on in one's physiology. But so now, after a couple of weeks of suspense, tell us about your pick of the 3 weeks.
Peacemaker. What an incredible show. So if you've seen the Suicide Squad, John Cena of WWE fame, you can't see me, took on the role of Peacemaker, who is essentially an anti-hero. The gag is, I want peace and I'll kill anyone who gets in my way of getting it. And
any man, woman, or child that gets in my way.
And so at the end of the Suicide Squad, he is left in quite dire straits, where it appears that he's expiring. And there is an after credit scene that lets you know, nope, Peacemaker's still alive, which was seeded into the film because James Gunn had started to write an 8-episode series during the pandemic that he thought no one would pick up at all. And he got in touch with John Cena and said, so if I wanted you to play Peacemaker again, and John Cena is just like one of these guys, I think, that went, yeah, absolutely. The best thing I can say is, if you're unsure of watching a film about a, anti-hero whose father is a superpowered racist.
Such a dirtbag.
Played by Robert Patrick, Liquid Metal from Terminator 2, and played perfectly. Like, you loathe him with every fiber of your being, as we should with all superpowered racists and ordinary racists as well. But we come back to Peacemaker as he's exiting the hospital 6 months after the events of Corto Maltese, where he catches a ride home to find his red, white, and blue trailer and I think it's a Camaro. It's painted with the stars and stripes. Goes to pick up his best friend in the world, his Eagly.
That's my favorite character.
Where he gets basically drafted into a squad run by Amanda Waller by proxy. So it's an extension of the Suicide Squad. That's not giving anything away. You can see this basically on the cover of the damn thing. If you're unconvinced, just Google or go to YouTube and watch the opening sequence, which is
the credits.
Which is it's Do You Want to Taste It by Wigwam from the 80s, and it is If you don't find yourself singing this for the next couple of weeks, I will be surprised. And it is a masterpiece of interpretive dance, and I will leave it at that. But the entire series is sublime. The dialogue is amazing. The character development is phenomenal. And it's when you don't see something like this coming, it was like the first time I watched The Matrix. I went into the theater not having seen a trailer and came out with my mind blown. And I came out of this with my heart exploding. It was great. It's wonderful. Please watch it. It's on Crave here in Canada.
It is indeed. If you are it's not for kids, just to be clear. It's a superhero series, not for kids. Whole lot of F-bombs. And if you are triggered by, it's a lot of political incorrectness or John Cena and his tighty whities, you've been warned. And it's interesting because I think it really speaks to the ability of certain, I guess, pro wrestlers and their acting abilities, because they are basically actors in their wrestling roles. And you've got Dwayne Johnson, aka The Rock, and his career that he's managed to forge for himself in film. And now John Cena, who does not take himself too seriously, is not afraid to play against type, and has a very like a character here who just you feel for. It's like you think a big tough guy like that, he's going to be like cock of the walk, big macho guy, and it's just like, wow, he's in rough shape, and he's got a lot of stuff that he's working through, including the stuff with his dad and just his self-confidence. And he's kind of a sad sack in a way, and it's kind of compelling because it's so atypical of regular sort of or a typical superhero movie, or especially because there is so much of the 80s stuff in there with the music. I mean, that's the other thing. Trigger warning: if you're not into 80s hair metal, you're gonna have a bad time. And honestly, I detest 80s hair metal, so I just I grin and bear it. But the rest of the show is good enough for me that gets me through it. So
it's been described as, like, Peacemaker's been described in this series as weaponized insecurity, and I think it nails it. And that's the thing is, because there is so much sampling of the 80s and 90s going on right now, this devotion and adherence to hair metal fits so well with this character. It's just
yeah, and it takes a while to get going, but you start to warm up to some of the supporting cast as well. And for me, it's Eagly, of course, and the dad. What a great guy.
I saw a post on Reddit that just said, if anything happens to Eagly, we riot. And I was right.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah.
Send him to Ukraine. He could help out.
Whoa.
My clearly haven't seen the last episode.
Oh no,
that's not a spoiler.
Okay. My pick of the week. Oh, go ahead. You finish your thought?
Nope. Spoilers. Okay. Nope.
My pick of the week is a series, our season we just wrapped up, season 3, the final season of A Discovery of Witches, which, if you had asked me a year ago if I'd ever find myself watching a show called A Discovery of Witches, I'm like, shoot me now. And I just think of the Roman Polanski version of Macbeth, where it was the 70s or 80s, and you got the witches, the naked witches in the forest. We watched that in high school, and it's like, what is happening? It's not quite this. There's actually a lot with vampires and demons, so it's a little cooler there. It's not just witches, so there's more diversity then that might be implied by the title. Obviously based on the trilogy of books that Stephanie had read, and a year ago we watched. What did we do? Oh yeah, we got Shudder and subscribed to it. We did the free trial for a week and binged season 1 and 2. Like, Stephanie had already watched season 1, and I had said to her, hey, is this something I should be watching? And she said, maybe. And so I watched a couple episodes. We started at the beginning and watched a couple episodes. Like, yeah, actually, I dig this. Matthew Good is in it. And, I'll watch Matthew Good in anything. Not the singer, the actor. And, it's got interesting world building, the whole thing, the relationship between the demons and the witches and the vampires. Demons, but yeah, and of course the vampires are coolest because they're Catholic. So what can I say? And
happy Shrove Tuesday, by the way.
Thank you kindly. Oh, right. What
am I giving? Pancakes. You're fine.
Exactly. So yeah, if you're interested into genre stuff at all, it's like, it's obviously not my usual sci-fi fare. It's more into the fantasy realm, but it's something that was well done, beautifully shot, tremendous locations, good acting, decent effects, and just really intriguing ideas. And of course, there's some allegory about different groups getting along and all that kind of stuff. But there's season 2. There may be a little time travel, so it's got a little sci-fi there too. But it's available on Shudder and on Sundance Now. So this time around for season 3, we went with Sundance Now, and just like we did with Shudder the year before, we forgot to cancel before the 1 week trial was over, so we ended up subscribing for a month. But that's okay, because it gives us a chance to check out other stuff on Sundance Now, like we got to check out on Shudder last week. Pro tip: if you're trying to do a time limited trial using Apple for your subscription, you can subscribe and then cancel right away, and you still get the trial, the 7 days or whatever. I knew that, but I forgot. So thanks, Pandemic Brain.
I signed up for Shudder, and then after about a week, signed up for a year of it.
There's some
we like our horror movies
stuff on there. Say again?
We like our horror movies. So.
Did you check out is it Beyond the Black Rainbow? That was one of the ones I watched on Shudder last year. It's nuts. It's nuts. Yeah, it's as if it was shot in the early 80s, but it's actually from only about 10 years ago. And it's just like, don't brew some coffee, because it is slow and like what is happening.
There's
it's
one
very
that I watched.
well done.
I'll have to dig up what it was, but it was directed by a music video director, and it's a sci-fi horror thing. I will find it again. We'll talk about it next week. But it was one of those things where I'm like, that was actually the thing that motivated me. I'm like, okay, you can have my $70. Just bring me more of that. And they did.
Awesome. All right. Well, we managed to. I turned myself off somehow.
There you go.
Hit the wrong button. And we managed to go way long, but good time was had by all, I would imagine.
Yes.
Thanks for some great recommendations. And Will, Gray, thank you all. Thanks to everyone all 3 of you watching. Find us at momentous.tv, twitter.com/momentous.tv, facebook.com/momentous.tv, instagram.com/momentous.tv. On YouTube, search my name and look for the Momentous playlist there. Punch and all the things, subscribe, smash the bells and the buttons and all that stuff. And other than that, Will and Gray and everyone else out there, we hope your week is truly momentous. Hug a Russian.